So I'm Eldad. I'm based in Tel Aviv, Israel, and it's really great to be here with you. I've been coding for about 20 years, actually since I was 12. I started my professional career at a website in Israel called Walla News, which is similar like to the Israeli Yahoo, if you're familiar with Yahoo. I've been there in every possible position, from a junior software developer to a team leader to a software architect and to the CTO. And I've been there about 7 years, and then I started a small startup that was called Career Page. Career Page was something in the human resources field, and today I'm working on Appwrite, which we'll be discussing. And I think the best way to start talking about Appwrite is to really try to understand why do we need backend as a service, or what are the problems that developers are facing today, which require them to find and look for new ways to maybe improve the process of building software. And focus on three main issues that cause, in my opinion, to software development to become really hard these days. And I remember when I started back about 20 years ago, things were much simpler. I used to say that software development isn't rocket science, but today things are getting a lot more complex. Technologies keeps on changing, and I'm not sure anymore that I can say that software development isn't rocket science. And just to summarize it into three main points, I think the first point that I like to focus on is that there are so many skills that a software developer has to know these days that it's really hard to believe that a single person can know and master so many skills. And we have many different types of developer today. We have front-end developer, we have back-end developers, we have DevOps, but still each individual role on its own has so many concepts and things to know. And on top of that, you have so many things that you have to know. We are talking about a technology field that is constantly changing, looking at just, for example, at the front-end role. So there are so many frameworks that keeps on changing. Trend that and our old knowledge is probably irrelevant anymore. So that's a major problem, and that's a problem that I've mainly faced as a hands-on software developer. And yeah, and the other problem is the second problem that I've really faced when I was starting to manage teams of developers, multiple teams of developers. As an R&D manager, I used to manage 4 different R&D development teams of about 20, 25 coders, and I could really see that a lot of the work that we are doing is really, really repetitive. You can see different teams working on really similar tasks, and it's really hard for them to find common ways of abstraction, like finding a single service or a single API that can solve multiple problems for multiple teams. And that was really frustrating because you have some kind of amount of resources of developers, and there's a lot of time wasting, and you don't have enough time to really invest your focus on your product or to reach your business goals. So that was another major concern that I felt. And the third concern, maybe the one that took so many nights of sleep from my eyes, was software security is still super complex. We're in 2020. You would expect things to be simpler, but it's still a major topic on its own. And starting at the first point, that there are too many skills to master. So this is a major skill, and it's not something like you can say, okay, I've learned software security, now I can like check it and say I already know everything. No, it's a constantly changing topic, and you always have to keep on focus and learn new things and learn new ways to write a secure software. And looking at all of these problems, you really try starting to think like we have a much bigger problem here. Software development is too difficult for human beings. It becomes like almost impossible to really control everything. And a junior developer is coming into your team, and it's like I felt like I'm setting them for failure because they can't know so many things. They can't control everything. So you can do a lot of training and stuff like that. but it's still really hard to jump on board and really start giving value at your new company, or even for senior developers, it's still really hard. So looking at common problems like complexity, repetitiveness, and seeing what other industries are doing, and even our own tech industry, like looking at solutions like the cloud, like Docker, you really see where a lot of complexity and repetitiveness is coming together. You really need to find new layers of abstraction to try and hide this complexity and give better interfaces for developer to reach the same goal in faster times and in better quality. So talking about Appwrite, that's exactly what Appwrite is trying to do. And in the most naive way, like Appwrite is trying to make software development less painful. But how does it do? How does it do that? Appwrite is an open source project. It's an end-to-end backend server that is packaged as a set of Docker microservices. So Appwrite is not just a backend service. It's basically a complete Docker architecture that you can easily install in one command line in your terminal. And once installing Appwrite, you get this full API with all the core services that you would probably need to develop from scratch in order to build most apps out there. So talking about the quick setup of Appwrite, so this is basically it. You can just copy paste this command. Docker will install all the containers, all the dependencies for Appwrite. The only dependency to install Appwrite is basically to have a Docker CLI available on your machine. And once that's done, you get a complete architecture ready to use. And this architecture contains many very useful tools for you to have a much better starting point if you're building a small app, a medium app, or in the future, even really big apps. That is something that we're working on. And just to name a few major services that can really help you. So Appwrite has its own authentication service, which allows you to log in users into your apps completely with like multiple authentication system, even if it's a login with a user and a password, even if it's a login with Facebook, login with Google, login with GitHub, and all those kind of different adapters. Appwrite today support more than 20 different adapters. So that's really cool. And you can manage all the users. You can check which country each user is logged in from, and there's a lot of cool features out there. The other cool service is the database. The database basically gives you the ability to add persistency to your app, meaning you have to save some user data, you have to segment some user data, you have to say some user data belongs to a team of users or to a specific user, or some data should be public. So that's really easy to manage using both the Appwrite database and the authentication service. And I'm not going to go through all the services because we have a full website with all the documentation and stuff, but you also have the storage API, which allows you to upload files, get image previews, to crop your image, to manipulate the image in any way you want to present it in your app in a really efficient way. Like you can change the optimization, the compression of the image. You can use WebP, the latest format for compressing images really wisely. And there are a lot of different services that Appwrite has that basically gives you all these abilities to build your app in a much faster way. So I mentioned before that Appwrite is basically a microservice architecture. And just to visualize it, so Appwrite only operates on the HTTP layer, meaning Appwrite doesn't do any UI intervention or stuff like that. It doesn't tell you how to show your UI to your end user or anything like that. You can basically integrate with Appwrite from any end platform like the web, mobile, even from your own backend. Appwrite is not opinionated in a way that it says, hey, I'm going to replace your backend. No, it says you can work with your own backend alongside Appwrite, or you can even work with Appwrite behind your own backend in your own internal network in your data center. Appwrite is also completely agnostic to where you host it, so it can work on your own desktop, it can work on GCP, AWS, Azure, whatever you want. If Docker is set up, you can set up Appwrite. And Appwrite currently supports only the REST API protocol to access all those APIs, but we are soon going to launch the GraphQL API, and we have plans for more cool protocols like gRPC or Protobuf, which will allow a much wider variety of use cases to use Appwrite. And another cool thing about Appwrite is that Appwrite has a single entry point, which does a lot of the security features that Appwrite implements out of the box. Cool security features like auto-generating your SSL certificates, audit logging all your user actions, like a user has logged in, a user has created a file and stuff like that, which you can also access all those logs from the API and like create really, really cool stuff, basically limited only to your imagination. And also, we have abuse control, which is really, if someone is trying to abuse your AI, Appwrite will stop it and will block it for a period of time. It's also, you can customize it and define your own limits, your own set of limits. And behind this security layer, you can see basically all the Appwrite different services that I've talked before, and you can go into the Appwrite website and learn more about the different services and APIs, which are all basically aimed to abstract the complexity and avoid from the requirement to build everything from scratch when you decide to start a new application or a new website. And it can also be like a desktop app or something like that. And here on the visual graph here, you can see that basically on the right is all the complexity that Appwrite is trying to abstract from you and is hiding from you. I wouldn't say you don't have to know about all these things that happens internally, but you can definitely not spend a lot of time on dealing with them, because Appwrite already take care of all what happens internally, like managing all your SMTP servers, your antivirus, which is also built into Appwrite, memory caching, persistent DB, time series DB for all the usage calculation which Appwrite provide you on the dash, and with a nice dashboard that shows you all your server usage, like the amount of requests, the amount of storage being used, and many, many more features. And the other potential about Appwrite is that it abstracts you from the need to integrate directly with the cloud, because clouds are really complex. You can see GCP, AWS, and they are not really designed for developers. So Appwrite kind of give you also an abstraction layer for the backend, but also for the cloud, because yeah, you need to host Appwrite on the cloud, but you don't have to integrate with the cloud with every little thing that you have to build. And so Appwrite is really cool about with this, like you don't have to build your own backend and integrate directly with the cloud or manage the cloud with every little feature that you have to build, because Appwrite is giving you a much nicer interface in a language the developer knows best, the language of APIs. So Appwrite already has in 10 months about 3,000 GitHub stars, a big community growing up on Discord with over 700 developers. And this was some of the reason that I've collected from both the user feedback that we're getting from the community and from looking at like the different capabilities of Appwrite. So these are some of the main features that really makes Appwrite attractive for developers and really helps developer. So the first thing is Appwrite is truly cross-platform. The only requirement, as I said before, is having a Docker CLI. And once you have Docker, it's really easy to get started with Appwrite. It's literally just copy-pasting one command line and waiting a few minutes for all the containers to be downloaded, and everything just works, and you get this nice dashboard, which I will show a little bit later, and all those cool APIs that are already ready to just plug and play, and you don't have to build them from scratch. You don't have to integrate different services. You get everything packaged really, really nicely. Another thing about Appwrite is because Appwrite is a self-hosted product, you can host it in your own data center. You can control all the data. You have full control over your users' privacy. So that's really, really cool. Another thing is that Appwrite is language and framework agnostic because it only operates on the HTTP layer. We do provide SDKs for several languages, but it's not a requirement. Like you can integrate directly with the HTTP client, with any HTTP client that you have, no matter what language, what platform you come from. And it's really, really flexible that way. Some other points that are worth mentioning is that we're really invested in creating great developer experience, and you can look at the docs and the way that we design the APIs. We really spend a lot of time like investigating what is the best way to design this API, what is the best way to make it flexible, what is the right abstraction point to make this API accessible for other developers. And when you build a nice UI, you can waste a lot of time choosing just the color of a button in your UI, in your dashboard. So we're spending the same amount of time deciding how our APIs should look. So that's really important, and that's really important if you want to create any good developer tools, and that's something that we are really invested in. And some other points about Appwrite. Appwrite is completely open source. All the services work really, really well together. So we offer a lot of different services, but they are also designed to integrate really, really good together. So you don't have to spend a lot of time with different integration with different tools. So everything was designed, we say, to work in harmony. Appwrite was also designed to scale because we're using a microservice architecture. So it's really easy to find your bottlenecks and scale up Appwrite. The Appwrite containers itself is pretty much stateless. So in order to scale it, you would just have to replicate it. But if you'd want to scale like things like the MariaDB or Redis that Appwrite uses internally, you can just find out how to scale those. Like those are common technologies, and there are so many tutorials out there how to scale them. So you would do exactly the same way to scale Appwrite internal tools. So it's really flexible in the way that you can really scale it and reach high amounts of traffic and users, and it's completely up to you. And we're really fanatic about security. As I mentioned before, security is a major issue in 2020, and Appwrite gives you a lot of out of the box tools to make sure your server has the best default security, and you don't have to do much in order to enable it. As I said before, technologies change all the time. Different framework comes in, goes out, and Appwrite really don't care because Appwrite is totally agnostic. It can work with any framework. We have just released our Flutter SDK a few months ago, and it's been really getting a lot of popularity over the Flutter community. And if a new framework comes up tomorrow, it will be really easy to integrate Appwrite into it. Appwrite can also work really well with your backend. It doesn't supposed to say like, hey, I'm your new backend. You don't need a backend anymore, because I believe that developers should have complete flexibility and freedom to do whatever they want to build and design their own architectures. So in that philosophy, Appwrite can work perfectly well alongside your backend. If you need to have some custom APIs, you can work with your backend. You can communicate between your backend and Appwrite. And you can also use Appwrite, the upcoming feature of Cloud Functions, to write your own code in any language. Currently, we're going to support, I think, 5 languages, including Deno, Node, PHP, Ruby, and Python, and more to come. Obviously, we'd want to support Dart and other cool languages also on the server side. So it can work anywhere, and it can be hosted anywhere. I like to mention that Appwrite has the potential to work on Pi3. We still got some work there to make it really possible, but in terms of the specs, it's totally going to be possible. We still have to create ARM builds for our Docker containers, but once that's done, it's supposed to work. I don't know how much time we'll have for example, so I'll just run through it.
So in the meantime, we have one question.
Yeah, sure.
As you told that that Flutter is yes, in the Appwrite there is a SKD. So what is the relationship between the Appwrite and the Flutter? So as we are doing the webinar on the Flutter theme, so what is the relation of both?
Yeah, sure. So when you build a Flutter app, you probably gonna need some kind of an authentication to manage users in your app, and you're gonna need probably some kind of persistency to save your user data as they move between different devices. And Flutter is great for building into multi-devices, whether you have a desktop app or a mobile app. So you can easily integrate Appwrite and Flutter for authenticating your users, for making sure your users are your users. And you can also use the database API, for example, to save data for your users. Example, maybe your user have some kind of a to-do list. So you can save all the tasks that the users add into the Appwrite server, and then you can fetch them on different clients and really control that really easily. Hope that answered, but the best thing to do is probably to go to the Appwrite website to take a quick look at the documentation, take a look at the different APIs, the different routes, the different capabilities, and really see how you can leverage that, because Appwrite can do a lot of helpful things for Flutter developers.
Okay, thank you. So that means Appwrite will work in all types of platform, in Angular, in React, in Vue. So besides the Flutter, it can run in everywhere.
Yeah, it's completely agnostic. We're not coupled to any platform. We're developing an HTTP API, and the community helps us to create some SDKs for different popular platforms that will make the integration a little bit easier. But it's possible even if you don't have any SDK for a specific platform. It's really easy to integrate Appwrite into any kind of new or old platform.
Okay, thank you. So you can continue your presentation.
Yeah, sure. So just to give a little bit of an example, a file upload would usually be a complex task. It can be a simple task, but if you want to do it really, really well, it might become really, really complex. And honestly, you probably won't go too far because most of the cases, this is not the main core of your business and it's not really important for your business. So you will do something very, very simplistic. But at Appwrite, we really like to do everything as the best as we can. So on the left, you can see a list of like things that your perfect service upload would do, or almost perfect. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but trying to be really, really good. So you'd have to upload the file. You'd have to have some kind of a validation on your file sizes. You'll have to validate that your file is from a certain type. You'll probably want to scan it for viruses, and this is something that most apps would never do, because not because they don't want to, but because they don't have the time or resources to do so. You'd have to make sure that your file is not being able, no one can execute it unauthorized with no authorization. You'd probably want to generate some thumbnails, especially if your file is an image that you want to show on your app. So you wouldn't want to show like a 4 megabyte image on your app because the bandwidth will kill you and it will be super slow. You probably want to compress your file because it's really, really heavy, and why not compressing it if you can save some storage and save some cost on your backend side. And you probably want to do some more things, also encrypting the file, which is something that might be really complex. So in Appwrite, you get all this stuff for free. You don't have to develop them. You don't have to think about them too much. You just get them out of the box. And this is how it would look in your API. I'm sorry that I haven't used my Flutter examples, but it's really, really similar. At the first line, you can see that you just have to initiate your Appwrite SDK. You can download the Appwrite SDK using any package manager. You can use the default Dart package manager, the pub sub, not the pub sub, just the pub. And then you just have to initialize your project in your new app, and you have to call the Appwrite storage service, tell him to create a file, give him the path of the file, and boom, you got your file on the server, doing all those stuff on the left with no time cost at all. So that's pretty amazing, because usually you could take weeks or maybe months to build everything on the left, and you get it for free. And that's what Appwrite is basically trying to do. It's trying to abstract the complexity, abstract the repetitiveness, and do stuff that are common to most apps in an easy, and give you an easy to use interface to do that quickly. I'll just go over the user authentication example really, really quickly. So you can see that in Appwrite, this is the old SDK actually, but the principle is the same. You just have to register your user, give the email name, password, and you have multiple ways to register a new user. You don't have to use the email and the password. And once the user is logged in, you created the user, you have to log him in, and you get a complete user authentication API. You can fetch the user account, you can fetch the user preferences, You can manage its different session. You can show your user from where is he logged in. If he has a session from a different city, from which IP did he logged in, you can log him out. You can check all the different activity logs that he has, and you can use it just directly from your client. So you can also participate all this data, like share it with your users. Just some quick screenshots before we are finishing here. So Appwrite comes with a built-in dashboard that gives you full control. It got almost all the capabilities of the API, and it can show you a lot of usage stats. So here you can see the dashboard, you can see the amount of requests, you get some different graphs that helps you analyze your app behavior. You can manage the database, you can manage the storage, all your files in the storage, see all your file metadata and stuff like that, manage your users, different background tasks. You can initiate background tasks to be scheduled in certain intervals of time. You can use the cron syntax to gain full flexibility about when to execute a specific task, whether it's every Monday morning or is it every second weekend or stuff like that. So it's really flexible and powerful. And that's basically it. As I said before, the best way to learn more, if you found it interesting, if you think Appwrite can help you, is to check the docs, join our Discord community, which is a great place to get support and advice if you want to build something with Appwrite, or if you have any issue or problem. We're trying to be really, really responsive. And that's it. I would love to answer if you have any questions.
Okay, I have one question. So let's say I want to build an enterprise level app. So this Appwrite would be capable of supporting that level, or is for scalable development, or is just some beginners like some fundamentals?
Yeah, I got it. Okay, so Appwrite currently is in a beta version.
Okay.
We still haven't released 1.0, which is the first stable version that we aim to release. And it's more targeted at individual developers, side projects, medium apps, medium organization, but we definitely aim to make it enterprise ready until we reach 1.0. So I would say not right now, but stay tuned because we do aim to make it a lot more enterprise ready in the future.
Thank you. So we have a bunch of questions. So the first question by Ruby Bajracharya. So can Appwrite provides individual installable models?
Yes, so basically the entire Appwrite architecture is really, really thin. You can install everything and use a specific service. You won't be wasting any resources, so it's really okay to just install the server as is and use just one model. We don't provide any single models as separate installable models because it would be just creating more complexity in the app, because you can really just install the entire thing and use one service, and it won't be like resource consuming or anything like that.
Okay. And so Appwrite is hosted on Heroku.
Yeah, so we're working on it. We've got some feedback from the community, people wanting to install Appwrite on Heroku. We do have a plan to support the Heroku deployment and other one-click installation platform like DigitalOcean, Kinto Hub, and stuff like that. And we're working to create something that we'll call like a light Appwrite version, which can be will be installable on a platform like Heroku. So again, you can join our Discord community and follow all the latest changes, or follow us on social media, because these are stuff that we're planning to release hopefully pretty soon.
Okay, thank you. And what is the estimation or a roadmap for a GraphQL to support on Appwrite?
Yes, so Appwrite is currently on version 0.6. The next version is going to be 0.7, where we'll release the Cloud Functions capability. GraphQL is aimed to be one version later at 0.8. The best thing about having an open source project is that you can go to our GitHub repository, click the star button if you're already there, and you can check the projects tab and view our complete public roadmap and see whichever feature is coming in which version, and everything is fully transparent. You can ask for new features, you can comment on upcoming feature, give your feedback, how do you think it should be implemented and stuff like that. We're having a lot of open discussion on our platform, engaging with the community to try and build the best software we can. So that's another great thing to do, and you can view the complete roadmap on the GitHub repository.
Okay.
So
So and just a bit of second. So what is the main agenda or a priority that we need to use the Appwrite? So there are others also open source platform. Yeah. So why to use Appwrite, and how it will be flexible or markable for the developer to code on it?
Yeah, so I think there are a few reasons. Obviously, the fact that Appwrite is open source is already a big advantage, but also the flexibility of Appwrite, the fact that Appwrite is not designed just for mobile development, but trying to be more cross-platform and technology agnostic than that. And also the fact that Appwrite is really we're putting a lot of effort on making everything simple. So we like to believe that Appwrite is simpler, but these are kind of stuff that are really harder to measure in numbers. And yeah, and I think the complete end-to-end solution, giving you everything packaged as a set of Docker microservices, is also a big advantage. The fact that we are using Docker is also making things a lot easier for both individual developers and organizations, both to set it up on your local desktop or on your already existing cloud architecture. So that's a major advantage using Appwrite. Of course, there are many great solutions out there, but hopefully we're trying to do something a little bit different, and it will be great for you to check it out.
Yeah, thank you. So,
Thank
Eldad,
you.
so for your wonderful presentation, and hopefully the attendee has learned lots of things about the Appwrite, and they will trying to implement on their scenario on their workspace.